All right, we're good to go. We're going to start. Okay, hello. It is, today is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. We are meeting in a hybrid model today using a remote meeting application provided at no cost to our district. BevCam is broadcasting us tonight, thank you, allowing for public access to the open portions of the meeting. This is allowed under the Governor's March 12th, 2020 order entitled Order Suspending Certain Provisions of the OML MGL 30A Section 20. This order specifically suspends the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. We would encourage viewers to utilize BevCam streaming options this evening if possible. Joining us today are members of the school committee, members of the public who serve on the F&F subcommittee, members of the district administration and leadership teams, as well as a city council representation. We're going to conduct a full roll call in a minute so that we can recognize those people who are not in the room. Please remember that any audio video you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record. As such, use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. The chair will call on you to unmute when you are recognized. In the room tonight, we have a school committee member on our F&F committee, Kim Coelho, school committee member Karen Robinson, myself, members of the public who serve on the F&F committee, Mr. Jeffrey Silva and Mr. Paul Manzo. Also in the room and not on the committee, we have Bethany Spolansky, Director of Special Ed Services, Director of Finance, Jean Sherburne, Dr. Chirocek, Superintendent of Schools. We have our recording secretary, Liz. Liz, I apologize, I still don't know your last name, and I can't see your name tag from here. And running our audio portion for us, running our Zoom meeting and letting people in remotely, the chair of the school committee, but not a member of F&F, Ms. Rachel Abel. I don't see anybody else. Online, we have joining with us a representative from the City Council, Ms. Julie Flowers, Director of Food Services, Christina Leal, and our friends from BevCam. All right, I don't think I missed anybody. And if anybody else joins the meeting, Ms. Abel is in charge of, quote unquote, letting them in. All right, what you should see on your screen right now is our agenda this evening. We are in a stacked meeting this evening, which means at 7:30 the committee of the whole is meeting. So we are on a fairly tight schedule. Our first order of business is approval of the meeting minutes of our last meeting. Someone on the committee, would you like to make a motion to accept those meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. A second. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Are there any corrections, omissions? Anybody have any comments? Okay, seeing none. We do not have to take a roll call vote this evening. Ms. Flowers is the only representative who's not in the room, and she does not get a vote. So all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from our last meeting? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5. That passes unanimously, 5-0. Our next order of business on our agenda is the Building and Grounds report from the Commissioner of Public Services, Mr. Collins. And what we do in general is we have that report. You guys all got that in your packet. And if anybody has any questions or comments on that report, it's not a voting issue. But at this point in time, does anyone have any questions or comments on the B&G report? Oh, Dr. Chirocek.
I just have one correction. It said BMS, but it's actually the BHS that got the tent with the concrete barriers around it. It had said BMS in the actual report. That's all. Okay,
fantastic. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Comments, omissions, corrections? All right. Next up is the Queen of the Beans, Jean Sherburne. What would you like me to share?
If we want to do the my update.
Okay, hold please. And I'll do a new share. Oh, look, it's sharing. Okay, awesome. Never mind.
Okay, so we're just stating that it's the month of May already, and the school year is coming quickly on me. So the items that we're going to be discussing this evening is the state budget update, specifically Chapter 70. We have a request from the Special Education Department to increase the nurses' salaries. And we have a presentation from the Beverly Lacrosse Boosters Association, our member Jeffrey Silva, and we're going to talk about FY21 financial reports. The first, next slide, talking about Chapter 70, I just wanted to inform the committee and just keep everybody up to speed on this. The governor's budget for Chapter 70 was set at $10,497,715. The House Ways and Means budget increased that to $10,590,914. And as you know, that's what we used for figures for our public hearing last week. And the state Senate Ways and Means budget has been released, and it did not change the number from the House Ways and Means. So that was good news for Dr. Schrotek and I when we heard that it didn't go back down to the governor's amount. It stayed stable. So the budget that we built has the adequate amount. Next thing I have, and I have Ms. Splansky in the room, the Administrator of Special Education and PPS is requesting the special education summer school program nurses' salaries to be increased from $30 an hour to $35 an hour effective with this summer school program. So we're saying as of 7/1 to make sure that we have that. And she's in the room if anybody has any questions, but we're looking for a vote on that.
First, I would entertain a motion so we can open to discussion.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. I have a question, but I'll save my question for last. Yes, Mr. Manzo?
I just have a really simple question. So what's the rationale for these
We just want to bring the hourly rate up to be more commensurate with other, similar positions for hiring.
positions are making above?
Correct, yep.
How long has it been at $30 an hour? Do you know?
So several years ago, I believe, Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was increased from 25 to 30 several years ago, and it's been at 30 since then. It's due.
Yes, I think it went from 25 to 27, or 27 was what another program was paying.
Who's Mike? Hold on. Microphone, someone. Okay.
Too late. So Mr. Manzo was asking how long it's been at this, at the previous rate, and it's been several years. So it is, and the $35 per hour is the highest amount on our curriculum rate in the teachers' union. So that's why we're also going with that rate.
Okay, did I see a question on the left side of the room? My left? Okay, then I'm going to call on myself. Jean, I always need to know, where is the money going to come from? Yes, my microphone is on. I see you looking for my light. Thank you. I
Sorry.
appreciate that.
Ms.
Where-
Splansky has a summer school program budget allotment, and she has assured me that she's going to stay within that budget. for
So the
summer
money is
school
already
program.
in.
So she already has it in the
We don't have to
budget.
borrow or transfer from anywhere else.
No.
Okay, no more, are there any more questions, any more discussion? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? That passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Splansky.
Thank you.
So the next item that we have is a wall ball proposal from the Beverly Lacrosse Boosters, Jeffrey Silva. And then the last thing on my thing is I'm going to be going over the financials.
Mr. Silva, do you wish to? I do not mind. Hold, please. All right, is this your first slide? And is it big enough?
It looks.
Okay.
I can see it on my screen.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay. So first of all, thank you. I really appreciate you getting this on the agenda for the meeting. Really appreciate that. This proposal is coming from the Beverly Lacrosse Boosters Association. A few years ago, we put together, the community of lacrosse players and parents put together a nonprofit working together to provide support for lacrosse players in both youth and high school boys and girls lacrosse. And we've been active as volunteer coaches and helping provide support for the lacrosse programs in Beverly. One of the things that we had done a couple years ago was to get a storage facility down by the turf to help store the equipment properly so that it wasn't exposed to the weather and also exposed to teenagers during the non-season games, so that we could at least try to maintain the longevity of the equipment. But it also serves as a way to store other pieces of equipment and other things that we use to help support that program. So with that, our goal is really to help improve the lacrosse program in Beverly. You can go to the next slide, please. This is just to outline the things that we've done. I've talked about the storage container. We've donated equipment to players and families that are first-time players that don't necessarily want to make the investment yet until they know the kids are have the skills to continue. So we have equipment to provide to those kids. Like I said, we have coaches and parents that are helping with coaching and supervising summer programs as well to continue the practicing and the on the off season, and that includes getting little kids involved in Little Scoopers, trash can lacrosse, where we lay trash cans on the turf and let kids run up and down, scoop up the ball, pass it around, and toss it in a metal can and hear the lacrosse ball hit the back of that can. There's also a chumash, which is a 3-on-3 type game with a narrow net that helps with accuracy and passing. I had made that with my daughter, and we have a couple of those that are used to help refine skills and just another game for coaching. You can go to the next slide. The proposal that I'm going to talk about this evening is really to see if we can get the Beverly Lacrosse Boosters Association is interested in putting together a wall ball for that to be accessible for all kids in lacrosse. And one of the key things for really improving skills is getting that hand-eye coordination with the lacrosse stick and having a surface to be able to play on it, to practice on season and off season. Having wall ball is ideal for kids that want to practice by themselves or even with the group where they're standing next to each other, using it as a way to practice together without having to have a full team practice. It's also important to have it available for on season and off season so that they can continue to, often what happens after lacrosse is the sticks get put in the basement, cobwebs accumulate on the sticks, and when you start off the season, there's a lot of drop balls, so it's really to motivate the kids to continue practicing during the off season. I think the vertical space, having that designated vertical space in the school areas away from the building and near the playing field would be ideal, just because it's where they're practicing. It's where they can sort of warm up before practice. When there are youth games that are happening back to back, there's an area where kids can warm up before the next game. It's also useful to build community and also to promote lacrosse in the city. So this is what we're trying to accomplish with this effort. Next slide, thank you. So this is just to point out what the wall ball structure looks like. It's they're either concrete block or preformed concrete structures that provide you with that vertical surface to practice on. I've put here a couple local Massachusetts communities that have put together something like this in their high school and youth programs. Pricing ranges from roughly 12,000 to 50,000, depending on what the structure, size, and size of structure, and whether or not it's a preformed or a block unit, whether or not a lot of labor goes into that. The structure that we are thinking about is the third one down, that top left structure with the work truck, that 4-panel figure. These are all preformed structures. They look like Jersey barriers that are taller, and they just show up on a truck. They place them down on a bed of gravel that has been matted down so that it's a certain thickness so that it can take the weight, and it's easy to put together. Within 3 or 4 hours, it's ready to use. Next slide. In terms of the proposal, what the Beverly Lacrosse Boosters Association is proposing is that we'll finance the entire cost through commitments that we've received, that will and also through fundraising events that members of the BLBA will help participate to raise the funds for this effort. The potential location I've got outlined in the next few slides. The estimated cost is approximately $16,500. The proposals that you see will either consist of a single 24-foot wall that's 16 feet high, or two shorter sections that are 16 feet high, but having two of them so that you don't have that 24-foot breadth of space. You can sort of break it down in two, but put them close to each other. The color, we're thinking of painting it so that it's blended, with maybe a pine green or something that sort of blends in with the turf or the grass. The surface would be the grass. We could consider turf if that's something that that was of interest. And our goal is really to have this by next year, to really help the kids this year, not only for lacrosse, but for other sports, have been robbed of a season. And I think this would really help them and get them excited about playing lacrosse in the next, for Beverly for the years to come. The options that we have, I have options 1 and 2. These would be this is the longer wall. There are 2 options there, numbered 1 and 2, at the end of the track area, either oriented in these 2 configurations. You can go to the next one. The third option is alongside, where they're 12-foot sections. The space is available in terms of it being well outside the foul line of the baseball field, and also doesn't interfere with the space behind it that is used for extra field space for lacrosse. The next option. Next slide, sorry. Option 4 is placing it along the side. Again, outside of the extra field space that would be used for lacrosse, well outside of that. Having the 2 shorter segments, that 12-foot section, the space is there to not impinge too much on that field space. It's well away from the field lines for that space. And then option 5 is something that could be tucked in the corner of that space outside of where the shot put and the track and field space. So that's the 5th option. And I'll just end with questions. Open them up for questions. Open the discussion for questions that these are just some questions that have come up from parents. Other locations, I've proposed those. Other sport programs that could benefit. They include lacrosse. It could be, you could also use it for tennis, for serving, and other sports could use these, the wall ball. In terms of the location, does it interfere with other sporting activities? I think the placement of where we've proposed is outside of the field area, so that it wouldn't impinge on any of the existing field space and wouldn't be in the way to interfere in those activities. In terms of construction, as you saw with some of the figures that I put up there, the forms show up already ready to set down, so there's no putting up of forms, having a concrete truck pour the forms, or labor involved with concrete blocks, so there's not a lot of time that's spent at that location setting it up. They basically deliver it and set it. What type of train? So this, you're not going to be able to get with the PDF. There's, in the PowerPoint, there's a couple video links to show the type of practices that you can do, practicing with right hand, left hand, all different types of stick handling skills that kids can use and refine on the wall. And then I'll just open it up to the committee's questions. Yep.
Thank you. So could it be used for general use as well? Could children just come and?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really meant to be there for people to use it with, and be available on the public space for people to use it for either lacrosse or other types of sports.
And there aren't any others in the city, are there? I know that the snack shack at Harry Ball is often used as a wall ball, but I'm not sure if it's actually designated for that.
Even though the
There's no
sign
real
says
good-
no wall ball.
Yeah, there's, when I was in high school, we would use the field house, and that's where I basically was able to refine my skills as a goalie. But there are signs up on the school, and it's not encouraged. It's actually, there's a sign there telling the kids not to use it. But there is old handball structure up, but it's not really in an ideal space, and frankly, it's not the right dimensions for it to be effective for lacrosse. And it's not accessible throughout the year because it usually has sand and other type of hard equipment that for the groundskeeping and sort of the staging area for city maintenance activities. It's just not a great space. And ideally, like I said, it would be better that it be closer to the turf area so that during those times when you have back-to-back games, kids are able to use it as warm-up space.
Thank you.
Right. So I should just say that because this request is to modify school grounds, that's why it's in front of our committee first. But then, so there have been some emails that are now all forwarded to Donna so that they're in our records between Bruce Doig and Commissioner Collins and one of the other city councilors. So there's already been some discussion about this. And as I try to explain to Mr. Silva, even if our committee says yes, then it needs to go to the committee of the whole. And then it's kind of, because we have the shared services of B&G, right? I think that, unfortunately, Mr. Collins isn't with us this evening, so by no means are we going to have a definitive answer, but our committee certainly can vote on this and then send it to the committee of the whole. And then what I guess is going to happen is then Mr. Collins will have to figure out, for instance, I would entertain a motion that says, I love this, I love donations, when do we ever say no to free money? But I don't think it's for us to pick the location, right? And then there was some discussion about whether you needed the building and grounds group to prepare the surface before it got brought in. And then my one question for you, so that's a question, I guess. Do you need them to do that or
I
not?
need them to do the preparation. When we put the storage container on the turf, Mike Collins offered to do that. And it was he offered to do it and said, if we have it placed there, you can just have it delivered. We'll set it down for you. So it's not a requirement for the city to prepare that space. We can have a contractor prepare that space to spec so that the units can be placed on the gravel.
Great. And then the one question I did have, based on the email threads, is this, are you only looking to put it at Beverly High, or are you hoping to put one here too? Or is the second one maybe dependent on additional fundraising? Maybe it's further down the road?
I'm happy. I mean, I'd like to tackle both, but if it's easier, I think the easiest thing to do is to put one at the high school first, have that be set, and then use that as an example of success to justify putting one here. I would like to actually put them at both, but I think the easiest path is to put the one at the high school because the space is there and it's easy to sort of find something. And those areas were suggestions. Obviously, this is something where we would ask the city to pick the best location. But the intention now is just to start at the high school.
Okay. So does any member of FNF, Julie, I'm looking online, do you have any questions? I'm sorry, I've been kind of ignoring you.
She had to leave the meeting.
Oh, that's right. She did tell me she has a conflict. Well, I missed my chance to let her ask a question. Anybody else in the room have any questions for Mr. Silva? All right, so
Question.
oh, yes, sorry.
So, I got a few questions. First of all, turn my button on.
Did it, Jim. Healthy to touch.
So I'm a bit, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a good resource to have. I think it would benefit, students all over the city. My concerns are several. One, if this is something that we see as essential for the high school athletic campus, why the district isn't doing something along these lines. Secondly, it seems that of all the people who should be in this discussion, the most important ones aren't in the room, and those are Dan Keefe and Mike Collins and maybe Betty Taylor as well, because they're the ones really responsible for the maintenance and the use of this resource, and possibly Bruce Doig too, if the location becomes more on the city part of that site as opposed to the school part of the site. And so I think to get those people to sign off on this
So I've
would be a
communicated.
first step for me to give my approval of it. And so before we have this discussion, I'd rather see those people weigh in.
So, Mr. Silva, you can address that, or I can.
I'm happy to have you address it.
So there is an email thread that I forwarded to Donna so that it's on the record. Mr. Silva started with all those entities, and they all pushed him here. So we're in a little bit of a chicken and an egg. And my opinion is that I would entertain, as the chair, I would love to entertain a motion that says our body thinks it's okay, and we delegate it to these other bodies to decide where in the final yes or no, based on exactly as you said.
Okay.
Are we okay with the maintenance? Do we, is our athletic director okay with it? And is our DPW going to help at all or not help? And Mr. Collins, please give us the final location, and it may be one of the ones in this, right? We just say,
Right,
we're
or-
okay with it.
Right, or he may decide that none of these locations are good, and so, for whatever reason, and so then it becomes well, if you've raised the money and this group approved it, it's got to go somewhere. And so I think you need to sort of do all of these things before you start raising money and before you decide it's definitely going to go somewhere. Because honestly, I looked at some of your, the proposed locations, and I saw issues with all of them, except for maybe the one by the shot put discus area, and that's only because I have no idea what goes on down there. But I've had experience with my son playing athletics, just as you have, on those auxiliary fields that they use for overflow for freshman JV soccer, lacrosse, whatever, that these walls sort of jutting out into the field might be a bit of a hazard.
So
I can see a lot of balls going into the creek, bouncing off of those walls, and then kids going down trying to get them, which isn't a great thing. And so I have grave concerns about the location of the ones that you've suggested so far, except for the one I know nothing about. And so I think that's something that you really need to sort of pin down
Yeah.
before you go too far down the road.
I appreciate, your concerns, but I do think that there are ways to deal with the concerns that you're bringing up, in terms of the balls and, getting into the stream space. You can put up netting, like there is at the end of the field here, to prevent
Yep.
the balls from going into the stream. In terms of the walls jutting into the field space, as I said, the 12 feet along the perimeter does not jut into the field space that if you look at the lines
Right.
that are used.
No, but what I'm thinking of is, again, we don't have to spend
Like
too much
this one,
time
like
on
number
this.
4, right? That area is used as an auxiliary soccer field. There are often 3 soccer games taking place all at the same time. So I could see where number 4 would be
Well, even
problematic.
number 1 and 2
Oh, here I
go
come. Hold on.
up.
1 and 2.
So that number 2 is jutting into that field as well. And you could see some energetic youth chasing down a ball going into that. And so I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think these are things that probably should be thought through before you say, yes, we're
Yeah.
going to do this.
Yeah, so
And-
these are, like I said, these are options, suggestions. The final, approval and placement is something that Mr. Collins and
Sure.
the city can participate in selecting the location for, but I think there's, a discussion that can happen to determine where those spaces are, or where
Right.
they could be.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is let's zoom out a bit and look at the whole campus.
Yeah,
And so maybe, because I understand you want to have it next to the lacrosse field, but you got to remember, it's also a foul line, it's a running track, it's a football practice field, it's a soccer field. And so let's zoom out a bit
yeah.
and see if there are other places on that campus where it can be put more safely, and it is still accessible for use by the students.
All right, Dr. Chirichek wishes a turn.
Yeah, thank you so much. And first, I'm not on that thread, so I've not seen those emails yet that you have an email thread of. So I'm curious to see that. I guess, I think, Jean brought it to me and said, this is coming forward, we think, and I think some of us want to make sure we follow the proper procedures, and coming to FNF for anything that's going to be, before we even begin contemplating and dreaming, we want to make sure that it's something that would be considered by the school committee, because we know that any change of a structure, any structural change or any permanent structures that go on to any of our school campuses have to start here, and Ms. Visnick said that at the beginning. So I think our sort of thought was, okay, well, let's go and start the discussion. I 100% agree. We definitely need to hear from Betty and Dan around any of the possible uses for our high school team. But I also always go back to the confusion that I have around who owns which piece of property on the high school grounds, right? So some of your options are on city property and some of the options are on school property. And I thought this was coming forward as a great starting point for this conversation to say, is this something we want to pursue? Is this something we want to learn more about? And bringing the proper people into the conversation. So my guess is it sounds like that conversation has begun on email. I was not included in that thread, so I haven't seen any of those emails. So
It wasn't to start either.
yeah, I have to find my way to get into some of those. But I think, like everyone, I think there's clearly some great merit to any kinds of enhancements that we can do and any kinds of opportunities that we can offer for sports. And as a former softball/baseball player, I lived my life throwing balls against a wall and doing some of those things. So, I think, I don't want it to seem that the school district side of things are saying, I need more information, we all need more information, and I think your presentation was very thorough and really helpful for me to wrap myself around where might a structure like this fit into our, into our community and what might it need. So I think rather than it being like that we don't, I guess rather than thinking that we haven't thought about it, I think we thought of this as the starting conversation. And I think Jean.
Yeah. The other thing I want to add to it is, as I was sitting here, not even thinking about it, and I did get a chance to preview this a few days before everybody else, is that does the city require us to have a permit to construct it? So I know in my hometown, I had to get a permit just to put a fence up where I already had a fence. So that's another thing is, do we have to get some kind of permitting from? So that's a question I just thought of
I
as
think
I was
that's where
sitting
the Mike
here.
Collins, and again, then there's the Bruce Doig side of things. Is this something that would be utilized by you know, do you have to sign up for use? Like, I'm not really, I had a lot of questions, and so I thought this was a great start in getting as much information and explanation as we can to start the discussion, and then moving forward. And ironically, I was with you on number 5, but I still don't know. I would really need to hear from Dan.
Right. What goes on down there?
Around what's going on, and I agree netting is certainly going to be able to be utilized for, you know, wherever we might need it, but again, that would be, it would determine where we were thinking about it or whatever. So I guess it was really, is there an appetite for this? Is there an appetite for us to continue? How do we do that? Who would you like, what more information do we need to bring forward? But
Right, so I
certainly
would-
is generous.
Yeah, I
so.
bring up the netting because there was an opportunity back when Cove Park was done for Landmark to basically redo those tennis courts. And what happened was there were complaints around, from the neighbors, that as part of that, they wanted to put in a third tennis court. And the argument, that one of the arguments that was made was, oh, there's going to be more tennis balls being, you know, tossed out and, you know, smashing into windows or put in
Right.
people's yards. But the simple solution was to put a net
Right.
over the tennis court area,
Yeah,
right, to solve the problem.
right,
$200 of netting
right,
that Landmark would have, you know, happily taken care of
Right.
that tennis court. And, you know, as a result, what happened with the decision, the final decision was to leave it alone.
right. I do think.
Disrepair.
I do think that what Mr. Manzo is suggesting, and I believe it myself too, so, is that in order to peel through some of these questions and concerns that people have, we need to have the right people at the table,
That's
which
fine.
do include, you know, bringing forward Dan and Betty just around the high school use, but more importantly, Mike Collins and Bruce Doig and location, where does it land, whose is it on, and,
All right,
you know,
so-
so it would need to be a community effort of cooperation in order to be successful.
All right, so I have a quick anecdote, and then I know we have a decent number of reports to get through, and so then I'll a quick anecdote and then a question for you. The anecdote is, I myself had the same who do I ask, and everybody pointed to their right in a circular motion to bring the textile recycling boxes into the city. And so, right, the school said, oh, you know, you have to ask the city, and the city said you have to ask the schools, and somewhere in there somebody said I had to ask the mayor. And so I don't want you to be discouraged.
I'm not
good.
discouraged at all. I think, you know,
Okay,
it's going to
good.
go through a process. That's perfectly fine.
Right, and so then my
started off with
question, I see-
emails, and having it here is perfectly fine.
I see your hand, Ms. Coelho. Hold on one second. So my question to you, Dr. Trocheck, would be who is going to own leading that herding of the cats, as I will call it?
Yeah.
To bring those, I asked if we could have Mr. Collins at this meeting specifically because I knew we were going to be talking about this.
Yep.
He's a busy man, you know, I understand that he's not available. But I did not, for instance, invite Bruce Doig here this evening. I didn't invite Miss Taylor.
Right, right. And so I think that what will come from this, and I think we have this conversation, and if it's something that this committee says, you know, we're in favor of pursuing this and finding out more information about this, then Jean and I will take it and we will organize that information and find a time to say, is it going to be on the next meeting? Is it going to be a meeting that we hold separate from the FNF meeting to find out the specific answers to some of the questions that some of you have, and then move forward from there.
All right, so given that, do you still have a question, Ms. Coelho? I'm sorry.
Mine wasn't a question, it was just a comment. I thought option 3 was actually a pretty neat idea, and if other students or programs could use it, it would be great. Maybe to partner with ROTC, they could also use it for the cadets for like drills and stuff as well. I just thought it was a neat idea too.
Okay, so based on what Dr. Trocheck just said, would a committee member like to make a motion that we continue to pursue this and we begin to, we're going to put this in the meeting minutes, herd the cats? So moved?
No, I would make a motion that we encourage Dr. Trocheck and Jean to pursue this as a initiative. Not to say that this group is approving or disapproving the
Yeah,
concept.
just let it go through the process.
Yeah, let's just, and I don't know that we need to even make a motion for that, because Dr. Trocheck just said she would do that.
I thought she said she would do that if we were not opposed. So I was looking for us
okay.
to show our support,
Okay.
to
You can just
pursue.
direct, you can just say, we need more information on this, so bring us back this more information, and, you know, I can certainly do that. Again, you know, it's a matter of connecting a number of different people who aren't all in the same place to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So we can work on that and come back with some information for you on that.
Okay, fantastic. Does that sound it? Are you happy with that
Yeah.
outcome, Mr. Silva?
Yeah,
And I can be in touch if we're having like a meeting to do it, I'll be in touch with you to include you in that, if that's okay.
that would be great.
Revenues.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. In your administrative update, we're going to,
I'm done with that update, yep.
all right, so we're done with the update, and we're going to move into our budget review. You want the revenues first, Jean?
Sure, the revenues is fine to do first.
Okay.
Then I'm going to have you jump to gifts to school so we have a vote.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, here's our revenues. The font's a little small, but oh well.
Yep, all right, so, and this time we gave you the account numbers, that was nice of us. What you have in front of you is the revenues for, that we've received, or going to be receiving. I really don't have any significant changes from the previous
concerns?
month or concerns. You know, the transportation revolving, I'll touch a little base on that, that the fees to be expected, we're probably not going to be receiving those, and I'll have to change the amount that we'd be using from the carryover to cover the driver's salaries. We've decided that we're not charging, you know, any fees this year for transportation. Building rental, the YMCA, I do believe that we will hit the target of the $120,000 that we were forecasting. The bulk of that is coming from the YMCA. We're still not really renting out to any outside agencies at this time, but who knows after the end of this month and the changes that, you know, what we can have in our buildings, where that will lie. The preschool revolving is, that's paid monthly, so I'm anticipating those. The athletic fees, I'm not really sure if we're going to be able to receive the $49,100 that we earmarked. As I said in the budget hearings, we forecast that we're going to take in $209,748. And this year we had 4 different seasons, so therefore I'm not sure if that we'll be receiving that, but I will make sure that we have the funding from the revolving account that we have for athletics that will cover anything that we were anticipating that doesn't come in. And the elementary strings, we're not collecting any fees for that this year. When we get into the top layers, the school choice, circuit breaker, special education tuition, and the non-resident tuitions, those are all coming in as we forecasted. We did not have any non-resident students from SEVIS, but we did make sure that we had enough in the revolving account to offset what we were planning on using there. I did have some conversation today with Ms. Taylor as far as last year, and we do have some students that are looking to come next year. So she has 3 inquiries at the moment, where it's kind of good news to hear that people are thinking of coming from other countries. So as far as the revenues are concerned, I feel that I can absorb any shortfalls in the existing revolving accounts for this year.
Fantastic.
And my plan is to make sure that those funds do have somewhat of carryovers into next year, so that we're not starting off in the negative state.
Fantastic. All right,
I don't know if
any
there's any
questions from the members in the room? All right, we're going to the next item, which is the gifts to schools.
Yeah, so we'll jump to the gifts to schools.
A little bit out of order here on the agenda, but we have to have a vote on this one, and we do have a hard stop due to the next meeting.
Yes. So the gifts to schools, we had 2 donations that came in. One for $1,000 that went to Beverly High School for their senior celebrations, and that came from the Institute for Savings. And then we received $1,000 to the Beverly preschool from the Cummings property staff giving. So their staff that donates, they donate to organization that the staff agree. So I'm looking for acceptance of the $2,000 that came in the month of April.
Looking for a motion?
I'll motion that.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Looking for a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Any additional questions, comments, discussion? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? That passes 5-0. What do you got next, Jean?
The last thing I have, so I do not have any transfers this month.
No transfers.
So
okay.
therefore, the only thing I have left to discuss is the year-to-date expenditure report,
Hold on. The big one.
the big one.
All right. I don't know that I can make the font any bigger. It won't fit. This is how good it
So
gets.
therefore, as each month, I bring the year-to-date budget report to the committee. Looking at it, I'm constantly looking at the areas that we may have some surpluses and areas that we may have deficits. If there's any surpluses in the accounts, they will offset any, deficits that we have. And if there's any way that we can funnel money into one of our revolving accounts, which is the only way that we can carry over funds from one year to another, I will obviously do that. The principals right now are looking at their accounts to see what they still need, and what they're shifting within there. So when I say I don't have any transfers, that's because right now I don't have any transfers that cross cost centers. But I am doing transfers on a daily basis, where if principals were thinking they were going to be spending money on professional development and they're not, they're looking at ways that, to make sure that we have the necessary, furniture in the buildings for, that's telling me that we have another meeting in 10 minutes.
We're on schedule.
So that's the areas that we're looking at. As you know, on page 32, I'm always looking at the substitute line, the OT 275, and I have $29,000 left in there for the remainder of the year. I do feel that that's probably going to be one of my areas that I do need to have, put funding into. As you know, the teachers are paid over 26 equal payments, so they get a balloon check at the end of June, which is the equivalent to 5 payroll checks. So a lot of times when we're looking at this time of year, we're saying, oh, wow, there's a lot of, funding available. And that's the one day that I actually hold my breath until the 5 payroll is run, and then say, okay, what can we do? So the variance that can happen is some people may have taken time off without pay, so that does leave us a little funding. And if we find anything that there was somebody that was paid out of an incorrect account, I have to do those transfers, which I will bring at the end of the year or in this fall on how we close the year out. I'm not sure if there's any area that, when I'm all done looking at all of these things, one of the areas that I do bring up each year is the SP 860. And last month when I was looking at this, I was like, ooh, I don't know. So we do have a significant balance in the SP 860 right now. So one of the options that we do have each year is that we could prepay some special education tuitions. So that's something that will be the first time that we've ever had that situation in my 10 years that I've been here. So I will be working very close with Ms. Splansky on that to see what can we do. So that would help us, for next year. By law, we cannot carry over any more in the circuit breaker account than the amount that you receive in this year. So to have a healthy budget, healthy is to take in what you take in circuit breaker in FY '21 is what you have for next year, and that's how we built our budgets. We're planning on rolling all of that. So when I'm all done with everything and all the moving targets, that would be one of the goals. If anybody has any questions.
I'm looking
On
for
a
hands.
particular
I'm
line.
looking for hands in the room. Yes, Mr. Manzo.
I'm just curious, so since you're on SBA 60, it looks like you got a lot left in both collaborative and the... It looks like you have both a lot left in both the collaborative and the private residential lines. Did something happen this year with those two groups?
I could have Bethany talk about.
Yeah, there are oftentimes changes of placement that happen. So students who are already out of district might change from, a collaborative placement to a private day placement or vice versa. So it's really just the kind of expected change of placements, yeah.
The other thing I'd wanted to add to that is that there's many times, each month, as you know, I meet with the special education department to talk about their budgets, and we do have people on our radar that we think they may be going out. So we want to make sure that we have that funding available. And these are students that our out-of-district placement coordinator is discussing. So that's another area that, I'm thinking under the private residential, we were thinking that may happen. So what will happen at the end of the year is I will move the funding all of it to, like, say, collaborative and pay the collaboratives in advance. There are some lines that do have negatives this month, and that is because I still have not moved funds that, so we receive school choice funding in, so under the HS 075 is going to be around page 17, 17 exactly, like the English line. So that's in the negative, and that's because the funding is coming, the school choice funding, I have a budget offset to the school choice account, but if we can carry it over, we'll carry some over, but that is going to be, I'm going to have to obviously use some of that. So I don't have that much of a surplus to be able to do that. So I do have a few of those that I still have to rectify, and hopefully I can get them done before the next meeting, so I bring them for the meeting. If not, they will obviously be brought to the fall meeting. Any other questions?
I have a quick question, but maybe it's for Dr. Chirocek. I'm trying to get myself back to, it's page 32. There's an outreach counselor that has almost all of its money left in its line item. OT 095 on page 32. OT 095 61005 adjustment. Total outreach counselor. We have $58,000 remaining in that budget, and I'm really just wondering why, given our situation this year, that we haven't expended those funds.
So that was a counsel that was doing home visits and in-home work, and she actually.
Microphone.
Sorry, that position was doing outreach in homes and had resigned at the end of the year, and so we weren't able to fill it. It is advertised to be filled now, but it was more of the home visit kind of work that was being done, and because of the pandemic, that work was somewhat halted. So we did advertise it, but we were not able to fill it. So it is advertised now for the next school year.
Okay. That's disappointing. All right, do we have any more business, Miss Jean?
No, and just when our next meeting is?
Approximately a month from now.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking.
June 23rd. And do we get our normal time slot back?
We do right
Excellent.
now.
So June 23rd, Wednesday, June 23rd, 7 p.m. Same bat place,
Yes.
almost the same bat time. All right, and we have 4 minutes to spare for the committee members who need to come on to the next meeting if you want to run out and get a quick drink or use the bathroom. All right,
Thank you.
motion to adjourn, please. Yes, sir.
I'm going to send out an updated version of the slide deck. Sorry, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm going to send an updated version of the slide deck to address some of the points that were made. Who should I just send it to? Yes. I saw it's, okay. Okay. Great. Thank you.
All right, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. It's not up for debate. Let's vote. Here we go. That's unanimous. Good night, everybody.
Welcome, everyone. Tonight is our Beverly School Committee of the Whole. It is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. We're meeting in a hybrid fashion this evening, using some remote meeting technology that's provided at no additional cost to our district, with some of the built-in captioning. BevCam is broadcasting us to allow for public participation out in our community. This is allowed under the Governor's March 12, 2020 order entitled "An Order Suspending Certain Provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, and it specifically suspends the needs to have the quorum and chair physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. We do encourage people to use the BevCam streaming options, if at all possible, to follow along with tonight's meeting. Because it is a committee of the whole meeting, it means we do not have an agenda item for addressing the body during our meeting, and we have a number of distinguished guests this evening. Joining us tonight, beyond the school committee members, we have various members of the district administration and leadership teams, and we'll call roll call on their attendance. And we also have a number of all-star athletes with us this evening. So please remember that any audio or video that you supply on the remote meeting platform will become part of the meeting record. Therefore, please use your mute functionality or turn off your video as you see fit. I'll start my video there. Let's just do a quick roll call. In the room, we have Liz Gurin, our recording secretary, Mayor Michael Cahill, Dr. Suzanne Chirocek, our superintendent. We have Principal Betty Taylor, our director of pupils and personnel. I always get that wrong. Sorry. Bethany Spolansky. Director of Finance is Miss Jean Sherburne. We have committee member Lorinda Visnick. We have committee member Dr. Ken-Ann McKenzie. Sorry. Yes, McKenzie. And then we have committee member Kim Coelho, committee member Mr. John Mulady, committee member Karen Robinson. I'm Rachel Abel. And joining us online this evening, we have the Director of Food Service, Christina Leal. We have the Director of Transportation, Dana Krushank. We're also joined by our Assistant Superintendent, Dorothy Flaherty, Principal Aaron Brown, and I believe the other members are also present in person. Yes, that is our roll call. Since we have a quorum and all members present, we do not need to do roll call votes this evening. And our first order of business will actually be the Pledge of Allegiance. And if I could ask Ms. Sherburne, I don't think I've asked you in a while, and you're closest to the flag.
The flag is here for
It is here.
our audience.
It's out the window as well.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And, okay, I'll trust you on that. Ms. Taylor, would you do us the honor of introducing our accomplished students here?
Tonight I have the honor of presenting and recognizing the Fall 2 season All-Stars from the Salem News and the Northeast Conference. These students have the distinction of being the very first Beverly High School athletes to be honored for the Fall 2 season, and we're all hopeful you will be the last to be honored for that season as well. And we'll be back to regular fall. So for indoor track, for 1 mile, receiving both Salem News All-Star and the NEC North All-Star, Heidi Eberhardt. For hurdles, again, receiving the award of the Salem News All-Star and the NEC North All-Star, Mackenzie Gilligan. For the Salem News All-Star recognition, David DiPietro. And for the 2 mile, for the Salem All-Star is Liam Olette. And for the NEC North All-Star for the 2 mile, Olivia Young. Our indoor track must be shy. For football, for both Salem News and the NEC North All Conference, William Adams. Oh, please come forward. The school committee has a little gift for everybody. And we want to get you on camera.
I want to get you on camera so they can see you, so congratulations to you. And this is for you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, congratulations.
Also recognized by the Salem News and the NEC North All Conference, Jason Stanton Jones. Recognized by the Salem News and the NEC North All Conference, Jared Mitchell. Recognized as the NEC North All Conference, Robert Lyons.
For me, seeing all my friends, there you go, congratulations.
For volleyball, for Salem News All-Star, Beatrice Lesser.
For you, thank you so much. Nice job.
And also for the NEC North All Conference winner, Natalie Reynolds. For NEC North All-Star, Maya Perrin. And I think that's it. That's what I have. Oh, there's some students that haven't received, that I don't have them on the list here. Oh, come and get your stuff. I was, get on camera.
Fabulous elbow bump. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Congratulations to our athletes.
And I was like, I don't know what the mayor's saying. He's like, no, right there, they're right there. I was like, now I know what he was saying. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You're welcome to stay and enjoy the rest of our open meeting. I know that there's probably other things you might be interested in doing this evening, so thank you so much. Thank you for your accomplishment and for coming to share it with us tonight.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So nice to have so many people participating in our meetings and recognizing the achievement of our students for that unique Fall 2 season. Next on our agenda was the approval of the meeting records, and Ms. Robinson and I have reviewed those, but we did not send them along. We will take them to our next meeting. And so that brings us to the fifth item on our agenda, just some reminders from the chair about our upcoming meeting dates. Just as a reminder, tonight replaces our committee of the whole meeting for next Wednesday, so you have a Wednesday off. And then with the activities for senior week, we also are skipping June 2nd. So that means that our next meeting for curriculum instruction and student life will be on the 9th. Our regular school committee meeting will be on June 16th. And our F&F will meet on June 23rd. I also had sent out an email to ask if we might be interested in repurposing our planned committee of the whole on June 30th as possibly an evening to put our retreat on the calendar. And I look forward to seeing if that's amenable with the committee members and if we have a topic that we would like to have a speaker come in and facilitate a discussion with us. We also are meeting as the negotiating subcommittee. We had a meeting today, and we'll report more out on that later. I think that's it for my updates from the chair. If Superintendent Juracek has a few topics for us tonight.
So the first, thank you very much. The first item is the budget discussion and vote on the FY22 budget. And so I know that we met last week and I presented the information. I will tell you that we had some questions that came our way from you on last Wednesday evening. So Jean and I have spent some time putting together some information for that I want to share out with you, and I'll answer any further questions on some of those. Excuse me, and I also received some questions from some school committee members via email, and so I'll try to address some of those, and then any other discussion or questions that you have as we go. So please interrupt me at any time if there's questions as I go along. The first thing that I wanted to talk about, we received some questions last time about, or there was some discussion in our last meeting about transportation and the impact of what transportation would have and what costs might be. So Jean and I spent some time this week putting together that information. Basically, we utilize the fees that we collect as an offset. So for the past 5 years, we've built into the budget a $218,000 offset for costs. So that means that within our budget, we have certain costs that are associated with that amount of money. That money is, we looked at the fee collection over the same period of time. We average a fee collection of about $190,000. So as you can see, that's a revolving account. So we utilize the revolving account, and then we establish a fee, the fees, and the collection of fees replaces that money. But that money is used to offset costs that we will occur throughout the year. Additionally, I looked at ridership because I know there was some questions about the number of runs that we have. And currently, we're running 10 runs. So in a typical year, we'll run 14 runs. We typically transport about 1,400 students. That is pretty steady over the 3 years pre-pandemic. And then this year, as we mentioned earlier, we're transporting about 780. And we do that over 10 runs that we have established. We've had 8 running, and we added 2 recently, so now we're up to 10. But we would anticipate at the start of the next school year to go back to our full schedule of runs, which is 14 runs. That is what we utilize when we start with the 2.0 mile mandated ridership, and then build in anyone that requests to transportation on a fee-based schedule from that. I just thought that some of these pieces of information and data might help you, because I know there were some questions about what would happen and what would we need to do. So if you think about it, each driver pretty much transports 100 students. And that's not a specific number, but that's over the 3 different legs that we run of transportation. So every 100 rider increase, we could anticipate the need for another vehicle and a driver in order to build the capacity. So I thought that was sort of a nice benchmark way to think about what we're doing. So that was just some background information that was asked for at our last meeting that I wanted to share. Would you prefer, Ms. Abel, that I just keep going on the questions, or do you want to stop and ask any questions on that topic? Okay.
If you have them listed, why don't we go through the ones that were submitted earlier, and then, as Dr. Turchik offered, if there's something that's directly related to the question or answer, you can chime in
All right. Go ahead. Yeah.
I have a bus question.
directly.
Yeah. Yes. So I believe you said we budget 218,000 for collections, but on average, we actually only collect 190.
Well, no, we know what our collections will normally be. Remember, we keep it in a revolving account.
Yeah.
So we know that we anticipate utilizing $218,000 out of the revolving account. There's always some room for, for collection error or over collections depending on ridership. So, and Jean will.
And the other thing I want to add is we also would take in revenues from the transportation for charters and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah,
Of course, that
field
we
trips.
haven't had, field trips. So
Bless you.
that, the 218,600 to be exact, is the amount that we offset for the driver's salaries.
Right. I just thought that Dr. Turchik said, I thought you said, and we on average collect 100.
Fees.
In the fees from the students, and then the extra is from those charters and field trips.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There was a question around, did we have money in the budget if we were to increase composting efforts? And so Jean and I, Jean has actually talked with Mr. Ailes and has a pretty, a better understanding on what our maybe increases will be around some of our disposal costs for trash. And so we believe that we have $25,000 that we put aside. We think that our increased costs for some of the things will be about $10,000. So that left about $15,000 to have available if we were thinking about increasing efforts around any of the composting or any of those things. Questions on that one? There was a question about extracurricular, the funding and how we do it and what we do for fees. So in addition to just looking at what we have done historically, we also checked, it sort of stemmed from the robotics conversation that we were having. And so I wanted to make sure that we looked around and researched with other districts. So we checked in with about 10 other districts in terms of what they do around their extracurricular clubs like robotics. Some of the districts had robotics, and so they spoke specifically to that. Others don't have robotics, but they talked about extracurriculars in more general. And typically, on the average, all of the districts were covering the cost of stipends, which we do, in their appropriated budget. And then any of the other costs were collected through either corporate sponsors, donors, or any fundraising activities that they do. And then in any case, if there were shortages, then they would look to the school for some of that. We do have some funding that's in the budget, so we would never not allow the robotics people to have enough money to get their fee if in fact they were short. Mrs. Taylor has sort of a fund that she could dip into to do that. And we pretty much, I think, Jean, it was $8,000 per year.
Yes, she budgets $8,000 for student activities.
And we use that for if any of the clubs have shortages or not, or anything like that.
A
So,
lot of times she uses that money if they want, they need bus transportation, she'll pay for that. And anything else that's obviously student activity related.
right. And our stipends, just so you do know, are part of our collective bargaining agreement. So the stipend fee that we pay for all of our extracurriculars are part of the CBA that we are in the negotiating right now with the union. And so fees or the costs of those stipends are set through that process.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. Do requests for any extra money that might be asked from families, do those go through, it's just something that an advisor can?
So, yeah, so that's a different, you want to talk about the student activities fund? The money's kept in a separate fund, so.
Yeah, so the student activity funding is handled under the treasurer at the high school, and then there's one at the middle school that has their own funding source. But as far as if there is anybody that needs, help with financially with the scholarships, that is totally separate than what we do in the business office for, scholarships for our fees, like tuition, I should say, and fees, like transportation. So what I do understand that does happen is that, like the middle school, if there's somebody that needs some assistance, the assistant principal would work with the PTO and to get some funding, or they would, sometimes they write grants to Bev Ed for those types of purposes. But as far as student activity fees for the individual groups, that scholarship doesn't come to my level at the business office.
There's some very strict guidance around finance and how you have to handle finance. So Jean oversees all of the student activity accounts and meets with the treasurers that handle the money. It's sort of a very, we have to be very careful about what we do with student activity fees and how we collect them and how we manage that money. And so, and Jean also has those accounts audited annually too. So to make sure that that money's, where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, we audit them monthly in our office, and then we do have to have them audited by an external auditor on a rotating basis.
Thank you.
So those were, was there anything that I missed? That was what I had for follow-ups from last meeting, from some questions that were raised. There was some from questions that came in from Ms. Visnick sent a couple of, sorry, Jean.
So the only other thing that, the only other thing that did come up with, that we did have a parent that questioned about the special education.
So that was also in Ms. Visnick's email. So
Oh,
that's where
she
I was,
did
yeah,
on
that's
that.
that's the one I'm getting to right now. So, yeah, Ms. Visnick had asked a question, particularly about a $69,718 decrease in the special education budget. And so I'm going to let you and Bethany speak to that because I know you guys did the work on that.
Okay. Bethany's behind me, so, so Bethany, do you want to explain? So we did have a change. So the one thing I just want to say first is that the change went from the original FY21 budget to the proposed FY22. So the revised budget of FY21, we level funded it from there to the proposal. But there is a difference between the original FY21 budget to FY22. So we did have a change that happened that Bethany can speak about what happened with that. And then we did add an additional special education teacher at the high school in next year's budget, but it's going to be grant funded, which we do know that we have some grant funding for that.
So the change that happened, we have very strict and clear regulations around staffing within our substantially separate programs. And so we actually had an enrollment decrease that happened within one of our special education programs at the high school. And so as a result, one of those positions was moved to the middle school where we had an opening within that program. So that's why there was a decrease. But as Jean said, there was an increase then of an additional special education teacher, which is not in the appropriated budget, but rather is grant funded.
Is that good? Okay,
Ms. Visnick has a question?
May I go back to composting?
yeah.
Sure.
So,
A very short note on that one, so I hope it's not too hard a question.
well, all right, so it's great that there's maybe some extra funds there. My questions then are, how are we going to decide if we're going to do that? And then the next part of the question is, do you envision that any of those funds would be for a stipend position so as to make sure that the program actually continues? Because as we talked about in several other meetings, any given school has started composting and has been really successful at it for some period of time. The old Briscoe, the old middle school, was great when we had, there was a young science teacher, and he led the green team, and under the auspices of that green team and his stipend for the green
health teacher.
team,
I think he was a health teacher, if I'm
Okay.
thinking of the same one.
he made sure that composting was happening there. And when he left us, unfortunately, because he was a great teacher, sad to lose him, but when he left us, the composting program at that school stopped. So I understand that a decent chunk of this money, probably, if not all of it, would have to be spent on the physical pickup. But I do wonder about stipending, adding a stipend to someone so that they would lead the composting effort at a given school so that it would actually have a chance of continuing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have it. I would say that right now it's not. We don't have it on paper anywhere. I think those are the discussions. I do think that as we return to school, and I don't want to. There's been a lot of change that has happened in a lot of different in our schools. We've had some leadership changes. We've had the pandemic. We've had all of the things that are going on. It's just been a kind of a busy year. But I do want you to know we do have those things on our radar. I don't have an answer for you today about exactly what that would look like. In terms of stipended positions, we have a process for adding stipended positions when we need to and when we identify them. So as we go through this process, that it would be what we would do. We would take a look. What does it need? Is it going to be associated with a club? Is it going to be associated as a outside of workday kind of responsibility that someone's going to take on? So I think the conversations are going on. I don't have specific answers to that right now, but it is on the radar as we go. And the other thing I also did want to say, I know that the mayor has mentioned, and you have mentioned the committee. We do have a teacher on that committee. We do have representative from the school that's working on the climate action
The Climate Action Advisory Committee.
Committee, right. So we do, Kate Twombly actually is our representative on the climate action, and she is an assistant principal here at the middle school, which I think is a great opportunity for us to bring some of those things that are coming back to the district, and she reports to us what's going on in some of those things. So, and I know we're awaiting a report, so.
Okay, thank you.
If I could, Madam President?
Absolutely.
I think it's a great conversation. I think we're just going to have to keep talking and working it through the course of the coming year. It's clear that, there are opportunities to try to divert more things away from our trash, and that's a good thing in and of itself. active composting of food, right, done right. Active composting of waste prevents methane from being emitted, and we know that's a worse greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, so that's a plus. And I think when you look at the final outcome of the Climate Action Plan, which, where were we just in a meeting? In the city council meeting the other night, Arena Keefe, Sustainability Director, and Emily Hutchings, the Assistant Planner, presented on where we're at with the plan, and the draft final recommendations are coming out for public review and comment beginning of June. So it's pretty clear to me that attempts to do more with food waste are going to be a part of those action items that come with the plan. So I'd say, I think we're all committed to figuring it out and working it through the coming school year. We'll make it happen.
And I do think that having these discussions is good, because it's like anything. If we keep it at the forefront, then something might actually come of it instead of it just being a thought somewhere. So I 100%, concur.
Go ahead, Ms. Bisnick.
A follow-up perhaps for you, Mr. Mayor. As we look to renegotiate I say the JRM contract. I don't know if they'll be the new vendor, but please use that. Take some liberty there with that term. Will the pickup at the schools be a flat fee, or will it actually behoove us to have less trash to be picked up if we were in fact composting? Right? In an ideal world, it would be, okay, I'm only picking up 2 garbage cans at the high school instead of 10 because we're composting, and therefore I could get a savings on my quote-unquote JRM half of the deal, and I could possibly use those savings to help fund my compost pickup.
Yeah, no, great point question. We pay a per ton fee for trash that, for disposal of trash. So there is an opportunity right there for whatever we divert from the trash to be a savings. Yeah, you could call it the tipping fee, yeah. And when we piloted the curbside that curbside composting program that we have in place, the year we piloted it, we tracked the diversion at those addresses, and it roughed out to about 20% of their trash was diverted, which led us to be able to offer that discount off of the trash fee of 20% for those who were taking part in the
Right,
curbside
I understand
composting.
that, but I was actually talking about the physical pickup, not the
Right,
tipping.
The pickup, so we haven't signed a contract, we're in negotiations, but there is a flat rate on the pickup of trash and recycling.
Schools get charged for the collection fee. The schools get charged directly for their portion of the collection fee. The tipping fee is absorbed within the city's sanitation enterprise fund.
But I think what Mrs. Visnick is asking is there a benefit for pulling out some tonnage on the collection side? Right, the contract's made up of roughly 3 things.
Right.
What we pay for everything that's picked up, and then a per ton fee on trash, a per ton fee on recycling.
So it wouldn't serve a direct benefit to the school budget in the year that it occurs, but the overall sanitation budget becomes healthier and therefore can fund more green initiatives, more composting, more types of programs that help the overall community work towards a more sustainable model. So it's not it wouldn't decrease Ms. Sherburne's actual costs, but it would decrease the city's actual costs and the taxpayers' costs.
Thank you.
All right. Rachel, can you let me in the meeting just in case I have to show something? Thank you. All right. And so the next question that I received was regarding the placement of some of the funds in the budget on page 30, the difference between putting additional funding in an adjustment counselor line versus a guidance counselor line. The position that we have proposed, the added position that we have proposed in the budget is an adjustment counselor, and so it would go in that. There does seem to be some clarification needed around the role of an adjustment counselor. The adjustment counselor is not a disciplinarian, so the question a constituent had forwarded you a question and thought that the position was disciplinary. It's quite the opposite, actually. Where our mental health services and where our social emotional support services come from are from our school adjustment counselors. They're not disciplinary in any way, and so that is the proper line. Guidance counselors do counseling of students, but those would be on more of the typical daily college career outcome kind of thing. Our school adjustment counselors are really where mental health services and supports around that are added. So that's why it was put into that line item. So that was one of the questions. And then finally, there was a question about finding the budget on the website, and I actually took a look, and I do agree that we can change the wording, but I did want to just take a quick minute, if it was okay, and share the, hold on, let me make sure that it's available here. Just to show you show everyone at home where on the website they will find the budget, because it is in the middle of the website, but I think we can do a better job labeling it. But just for those who are watching, I just take a minute to share. This is our website, and the budget is right here. So there was some questions as to, where we had it located. It's literally in the middle of the page. However, I can understand the confusion because the label that we have says public hearing rather than here's where you click to get the draft budget. So the draft budget is located on the website right in the middle, and tomorrow I'll have them change the narrative on that page so that everybody understands that's where they can find the budget very easily. And it will be located, eventually nested under all of the different places, probably in 3 or 4 places within the website. We usually have it nested in a few different places so people can easily find it, but I did just want to share that with everybody as to where they were located. So that's it. Those were the 3 questions that I had there. Any questions, follow-ups on any of those? Yep.
Just wanted to make a comment that the adjustment counselors often have social work degrees, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it is a different licensure, actually. In order to be, there is a guidance counselor licensure and a school adjustment counselor licensure. It is different licensures. So yes, thank you. There was a question about remote learning, and I did bring up some information about remote learning to the committee a while ago. We had investigated the opportunity to create some remote learning options for families in the 21-22, that's next year, right? In the 21-22 school year. We did not have enough interest to be able to pursue getting a district-run remote learning academy. At the time, I mentioned the option possibly of working regionally, and I have had some conversations with superintendents. That process takes a full year, so we would not be able to offer any of that in the 21-22. That work would be looking to the 22-23 school year. That said, remote learning options, the commissioner has said there's going to be very little option for remote learning. Really the way to do it would be through that district program. So at this time, we're not planning on having a remote option for families.
I was just going to say, it does seem like it's going to be a lengthy process, and that it was a pretty short list of districts that are still moving forward in the process. We have one neighboring town, Peabody, that was on the list.
Yep. And again, the restrictions around the number of participants that you needed to have and how you needed to set it up. But I do believe there's some real merit to continuing to pursue the regional option, and there's some surrounding superintendents who are also very interested in working with that too and seeing what that would look like. So,
Ms. Bisnick, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. So when we see on the news that Peabody is, I suspect that's the neighbor that you're talking about, is doing that, you're telling me that they're not doing it for 21-22, but
they are doing it, but the restriction is that they can only serve their own district. They can't regionalize. They're not allowed to accept they're not allowed to do that. There's one process for getting a district approval to have some remote learning academy, and then there's a separate process for having a regionalized one.
Okay.
And the regionalized one, you have to send your letter of interest a year in advance, and the process takes a year. And I think largely because it's spread over the number of districts and funding, and all of those things are more complicated. So,
okay, thanks.
sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just, it seems like if, and several members of this committee have said this several times this year, if we're trying to do what's best for children, it seems difficult to fight the bureaucracy that would make it take a year, especially given that we're in an exceptional circumstance. And I appreciate the fact that we don't have enough to do for our own district. But given that we have somebody right down the road doing it, it does seem quite frustrating for those families who, for whatever reason, feel the need to have this option, that they're going to have to wait a year to do it. So that was my heavy sigh. I apologize.
That's okay. So that's all I have right now for specific questions. I have a couple of items for after the discussion around the budget and the vote.
So it would be a good time now if any committee members had any final questions that they either just thought of based on this new information or hadn't had a chance to ask Dr. Trocheck. Ms. Robinson.
Just how many families were interested in
So
remote learning?
we did the survey. We sent it out to all of the families that were currently in remote learning. We received responses from about 40%, and we did not have any grade levels that had double digits of interest. So I would say the total number was like 37 that had interest, but it was spread over the 12th grades. So we had, 4 or 3, depending on the grade level. One grade level had 7. That was, I think, our highest grade level. So there was just a smattering. And originally we had thought, even if we could get multi-aged classes going, that would be one thing. But we really didn't even have enough multi-age, to figure out how to be able to do that.
I'm looking around the table. We don't have any more questions. Are we ready to entertain a motion about the FY22 budget? Mayor Cahill.
Sure. I'll move we approve the proposed FY22 budget.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Ms. Abel, can we add have the total dollar amount in that vote? So that is one thing that always comes back. that
Could you bring the,
The amount is $65,376,407.
okay, so we have a motion on the table by Mayor Cahill to bring forward the recommended budget of $65,376,407, and that's seconded by Ms. Coelho. Do we have any more discussion? Mayor Cahill.
But I just want to thank everybody who's been involved, and all of us, and especially Dr. Trocheck, Jean, and the whole team at all the schools, the building levels, and at the central office. A lot of great work has gone into this. Thanks.
Ms. Visnick.
I wish to make a comment that we have discussed in other meetings the fact that it looks a little ironic in our elementary schools that our kindergarten classes are larger in many cases than our other grade levels, and the fact that our incoming kindergartners are not as adversely affected by the past 15 months or so. I mean, they were probably, 3.5 to 4-year-olds being at home like they were supposed to be at home, and maybe they weren't affected certainly like our children who were supposed to be in school who didn't get to be in school. That said, I still think that across the board, I'm absolutely in support of this budget, but I would love to see smaller kindergarten classes, especially as we see at the national level that we're hoping to move to universal pre-K. Our youngest learners need the most amount of help, and it would be fabulous if we could find a way to lower our kindergarten class size, even if just a little, if not in this year's budget, hopefully in future years' budgets. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. I'm not seeing any other hands. Are we ready to vote? Okay, the motion on the table is to put forward the recommended budget of $65,376,407. All those in favor? It's a 7-0 unanimous vote. So for the new members or people who haven't been following along at home, now it's in the mayor's hand to put forward to the city council, and there are a number of dates coming up in June where the city council will be going line through the city budget. Mayor Cahill.
Do you want the date on the presentation of the school budget?
I
You already
think-
said it
I-
already?
Well, I didn't say it,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
think I heard today it's on the 8th of
June
June.
8th.
June 8th.
June 8th at 7 PM. And I will let the committee know if there's a remote participation option or if it will be fully in person at City Hall.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just have a couple other small things. Well, one's a wonderful thing, I think. We have been able to work with Curative, which is the group that is providing the vaccines at Doubletree, and we will be holding a couple of vaccine clinics here in Beverly, one at the Beverly Middle School and one at the Beverly High School. We have 300 doses of vaccine available that we will be sending out information to parents and families in the next coming days. June Cases has been working really closely with Teresa Kirsch to put the information together. Those clinics will be held on May 26th at the middle school for middle school students and staff, and it will be held at the high school on May 27th between the hours of 9 and 1. Students will be able to get parent consent to go in so that parents don't have to be there with them when they get that dose. And then the second dose will be administered for the middle school on June 16th from 9 to 1, and the second dose for the high school will be on June 17th from 9 to 1. So we're just really excited about the opportunity to be able to offer some options for our students to become vaccinated.
Is that 300 per school?
300 per school, so 300 doses at the middle school and 300 doses at
And
the
it
high
would
school.
be for the first and second shots for the same students?
300 students each session, and then 300 students each session, yep. And so, we're really excited about that opportunity, and, look forward to everything we can do as we continue to get vaccinated.
Ms. Robinson?
First of all, thank you for that. That's amazing.
Yep.
And second, I've just heard a lot. What are the rules around asking people if they are vaccinated in the schools? Does anybody?
I don't know.
No?
I'm going to give you an I don't know on that one because I don't know. I don't know there are rules. I do know that we really strongly are encouraging everyone to become vaccinated. And I want to be very, very clear. I really want to thank June Cases for this. And I know that I announced to you all that June Cases is retiring on June 30th, but she worked really, really hard. This was she heard about it and she jumped right on it. And there's not a lot of opportunities for schools to have set these up. They're booked now through the end of the school year. They can set them up, but they'll be beyond the school year. So, this is a great opportunity for us to support families that may not have the access to get where they need to get, but that opportunity to have the vaccine right in there. So I just really wanted to make sure that a shout out to June Cases and the work that she did to get this for us. She worked really hard on it.
I want to echo that thanks for June Cases to bring it to our schools. 300 is a small proportion of our 12 to 18-year-olds that we have in the buildings. So it really is designed for people who may not have, access or the availability to get to one of the clinics. I think there's a lot of walk-in opportunities for parents. You don't have to wait until these clinics.
Don't
I
have
would
to, but-
actually recommend if you have the means to get to another option. I think a few of us have kids that have, fallen into this new category. It's been a breeze. And
And I would also say any of our staff that still might want a vaccination opportunity, they will also be very much welcome to join us at this clinic and receive their
that's great
vaccination.
to know as well. Sorry, Ms. Visnick, I didn't see your hand there.
Do we have some kind of flyer or announcement about this that we can help share via
Yes, so
social media?
June has an announcement that's coming. We're finalizing, I think that I know I announced the dates, but I think that June 16th date is still only tentative, waiting for approval because it had to be moved because of 8th grade moving on ceremony. So I think she's working on that and we'll have all that information. There'll be a registration link. And so we're really looking forward to being able to provide that for our students. And that information will be coming before the end of the week. So because it's next week. So. All right. And then the only other thing I had, there was I sent a Connect Ed message out to families tonight The mask, as you all know, the Governor Baker changed some of the outdoor masking guidance. Many school communities on Tuesday just jumped right in on it. We decided that we needed to wait a day or two. We wanted the principals to have the opportunity to work with their staff as to what does a second grader do with their mask when they're outside, and how do we get out there, and where do we do it. But beginning tomorrow, we will be allowing students outdoors at recess without masks. We certainly welcome anyone that wants to continue wearing their mask if they feel better with that. But we will be following the guidance, and I did send a Connect Ed message out to families this evening, so they have that information available to them. All right, and the only other guidance, there was additional guidance on the end-of-year events. We're still processing through those. Looking really good for some really smiley faces at Hurd. I won't say anything more than that, but we'll be able to maybe see some smiling graduates on the day of graduation, so that's really helpful. So we have not peeled through that yet. We have not finished all of that, but we will get that information out as soon as we can.
So we'll have to work on our tan lines. I noticed some of our athletes have some pretty significant tan lines going on, so
Yeah.
thanks. Okay, do we have any more questions for Dr. Turchik? Ms. Visnick?
Relative to graduation,
Yep.
Heard, do we have any clue whether there's going to be a limit on the number of adults who can be there?
Well, did Miss Taylor leave? Oh, she's lucky she left. No, I'm only kidding. I will say that we are working with the new guidance, and we'll have that information for you shortly.
All right, so
I
are we all
really-
going to be able to be there?
Yes.
Okay. And what about 8th grade move up?
So there, Mrs. Oliver is working on that. They have some plans for outdoors. They are not going to change their plans, but they are able to increase the number of people that can come there. I think they're planning it by neighborhood. So each neighborhood at a different time during the day. I believe they were worried and had some significant restriction issues, and I believe some of those have been relaxed, but I don't know the exact number. I'm going to say they're aiming to have at least 2 people for each student be able to attend.
Right, so in the past, we've been
About
been
that.
there?
Yes, so
Like,
that.
it's really all about me.
It's all about you. Well, I will tell you that it's on June 17th. I know that because we had to move the vaccination clinic. I know that much so far, but I believe that there'll be information forthcoming from the principals will be extending their invitations as they usually do. So for that, but that one's not till June. I know the high school graduation is much sooner.
All right, and one more.
Go ahead, Ms. Visnick.
Should we take my last question that I forwarded to you today offline?
Sure.
Thank you.
Just a little intrigue to end the meeting.
Bum, bum, bum. I think we've reached the end of our posted agenda for the evening, and I would now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Do we have
I
a
will
second?
second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, BevCam. Appreciate it.